field near the river Aller. October 7082 AD. 4,500 men kneel in the mud, hands bound, weapons long gone. They can hear horses moving behind them. Nobody is speaking. The man who gave the order to be here is remembered as the Father of Europe. His empire stretched across modern France, Germany, and Italy. The Pope himself crowned him emperor. Textbooks call him Charlemagne the Great. So which is it? History's greatest statesman, or one of its most efficient mass murderers? By the end of this video, you'll have the evidence. Let's start with the version of Charlemagne you've probably heard before because it's not wrong, it's just incomplete. In the year 800, on Christmas Day, Pope Leo III placed a crown on Charlemagne's head in Rome and declared him emperor. For the first time in over 300 years since Rome itself collapsed, which we covered last episode, there was an emperor ruling the West again. Under Charlemagne, a kingdom of feuding Frankish nobles became something closer to an empire. He pushed his borders across what's now France, Germany, the Low Countries, and down into northern Italy and Spain. He brought scholars to his court, revived Latin learning, standardized handwriting so manuscripts across his empire could actually be read by the same alphabet historians call this the Carolingian Renaissance, a genuine flicker of light after centuries of collapse. This is the Charlemagne on the coins. The Charlemagne in the stained glass windows of European cathedrals. The Charlemagne every European monarchy since has tried to claim as an ancestor, literally or symbolically. But empires this size don't get built by accident, and they don't get built gently. And there's one campaign in Charlemagne's reign that his admirers tend to skip straight past. North and east of Charlemagne's kingdom lived the Saxons. Unlike the Franks, the Saxons weren't Christian. They worshipped a pantheon of gods, held sacred groves and pillars as holy sites, and had no single king or capital. They were organized in scattered clans, which made them nearly impossible to conquer in one decisive battle because there was no single leader to defeat and no single city to capture. Starting in 772, Charlemagne launched a campaign against them. Not a single war, a campaign that would drag on and off for 32 years. One of his opening moves was symbolic and deliberate. He destroyed the Irminsul, a massive wooden pillar sacred to Saxon paganism at the heart of one of their religious sites. It was the medieval equivalent of marching into someone's temple and tearing down the altar. The Saxons fought back. Hard. And leading that resistance was a war chief named Widukind. For years, this became a brutal pattern. Charlemagne's armies would push into Saxon territory, force submissions, baptize communities into Christianity at the point of a sword, and then leave. And the moment his forces left, rebellions would flare up again, led by Widukind, who seemed to specialize in vanishing and reappearing exactly when the Franks let their guard down. In 782, that pattern broke violently. Widukind convinced a group of Saxons who had already submitted to Frankish rule to rise again. They ambushed a Frankish army at a place called the Suntel Hills, and they didn't just win, they annihilated it, killing two of Charlemagne's most senior commanders. Charlemagne's response, according to the Royal Frankish Annals, the official chronicle of his own court, was to march into Saxon territory, round up the men responsible, and order all of them executed. In a single day, at a place called Verden. The number given in that chronicle is 4,500. Sit with that for a second. Not a battle. Not a siege. 4,500 disarmed prisoners, killed on the order of the man history remembers as the Great. Here's where this story gets genuinely strange, and where a lot of history channels stop digging, but we're not going to. Our entire knowledge of the Verden massacre comes from exactly one source, the Royal Frankish Annals. And the Royal Frankish Annals weren't written by some neutral outside observer. They were Charlemagne's own court record written by people whose job, in part, was to make Charlemagne look justified. So historians have spent centuries picking that single sentence apart. Some scholars have proposed that the number 4,500 was inflated for effect, a warning written into the historical record, meant to terrify future rebels rather than accurately report a body count. A few have gone even further, suggesting the entire massacre might be the result of a scribal mistranslated that a word meaning deported was miscounted into a word meaning beheaded somewhere down the manuscript chain. To be clear, that theory is a minority position, and most historians today still accept that some large-scale execution took place at Verden in 782. But the fact that serious scholars are still debating whether we've even correctly translated the only sentence describing this event tells you something important. History isn't a fixed list of facts. It's a set of claims, filtered through the people who had every reason to shape how those claims were written down. If you think the story ends there, it gets one more twist, and it's a dark one. Fast forward over 1,000 years to Nazi Germany. You'd expect a regime obsessed with a Germanic racial narrative to celebrate Charlemagne, right? The empire builder? The conqueror? They didn't. Because Charlemagne was the one who crushed the pagan Saxons and forced Christianity onto them. To Nazi ideologues, that made him the villain of the story and Widukind, the pagan resistance leader, the real hero. Heinrich Himmler's own cultural adjutant reportedly argued Charlemagne should be renamed Karl the Slaughterer instead of Karl the Great. Voltaire, centuries earlier, had already called him a thousand-fold murderer. So this isn't a modern reassessment. People have been arguing about whether Charlemagne was a hero or a monster since almost the moment the ink dried on that chronicle. So conqueror or butcher? The honest answer is, both labels are doing too much work. Charlemagne built something that outlasted him by centuries. He also, by his own court's account, killed thousands of disarmed people in a single afternoon to make a political point. Neither fact cancels out the other. Maybe the real lesson of Charlemagne isn't which word we pick for him. It's that great and brutal were never opposites in the medieval world. They were often the same job description. Next episode, we're staying in this same century, but heading somewhere we deliberately left hanging back in episode 1, the empire that never actually fell. Byzantium is waiting.